Before we get into the video today, guys, just a brief thank you to our sponsors, which happen to be me. So today, this video is brought to you by my own platform, the Esoteric Academy. The Esoteric Academy is an online virtual mystery school where we have all these different courses. We also have exercise classes. We're going to be starting live calls and live classes in February. Right now, we are in our soft launch phase, So for right now, you can get tuition to this mystery school for only $25 a month. That's right, you heard me correctly. Only $25 a month. That's so cheap. And here's the thing. If you purchase into this academy during the soft launch, you are locked in that price for forever. So your price, your tuition will never go up. Over time, we will always have what we have up right now. It's never going away, but we will also be adding in even more content as time goes on. You're going to get 3 to 4 more exercise each and every month. Also more courses, again, as well as live calls and live practices. If you would like more information on the Esoteric Academy, there is a link down in the description box below. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Esoteric Atlanta. Of course, my name is Bryce. This is our first coffee chat of 2025 because it's been like 3 weeks, hasn't it, Catherine? Because I actually just finished mine because it's cold as hell here, so we'll get into that. But how are you, Catherine? How's your 2025?
I'm good. If I look really uncomfortable, it's because I am really uncomfortable because Idris has pushed me off my own computer chair and he will not take no for an answer. It's cold outside like you, although it's expected in the UK. It's not expected where you are. I'm okay. At the beginning of the week, if you'd have asked me, I'd have said, I am top of the world, great. And I was speaking to a friend just before we came on, and I was just, I'm feeling the heaviness of everything that's going on in the world. I mean, even the tiny proportion that I know about. So I'm trying to go back into employing all my tools and techniques because I'm no good to anyone if I let that get to me.
Yeah, it's crazy. I know you guys probably, I sent Catherine, we usually film on Thursdays, but I had some travel plans on Thursdays that got kind of messed up. So we pushed it back a day, and we were expecting that, they were saying that there was potentially a winter storm coming into the South, but you guys, this is the Sun Belt. Like when they claim that, it typically never happens anyway. Like we just don't deal with snow down here, but it is literally coming down. It is coming down right now. And so I was telling to you, Catherine, I sent you a video early this morning because I was like, if you get a chance to hop on earlier, we might lose power. And I sent you the video, which my dog is going to be pissed. He's going to be so mad at us when he goes outside. But for everybody in the Southeast, please be careful. We don't know. I know people in the North make fun of us a lot about this. We literally don't have the infrastructure. I mean, as a huge country as we are, each state has income taxes for the state, and that makes sense because we don't need to be spending money on salt machines because we don't get snow, and so we don't have the infrastructure. And so when this happens in the South, it shuts the South down. So a lot of people are at home right now because it's too dangerous to drive. We don't know how to drive in the snow. We don't know how to deal with that. So so if you are in the South, please be very, very careful. Something funny, Catherine, I saw a TikTok, and this girl was right. She's from the South. And she was like, for all the Northerners, the Yankees who moved down here, just some little information for the snow. First of all, it's not going to be like it is up there for you guys. Everything is going to shut down. You best go to the grocery store and get yourself some milk and eggs and cheese. That's just what you get. Doesn't matter if that's what you normally eat. That's just the protocol. And then she was like, and if you want a sled, if you want to have fun in the snow, we don't sell sleds down here. So what you're going to have to do is go and get a garbage can lid or a cardboard box. That's what we slid down in here.
Yeah, we do trays. We get a good old kitchen tray and sit on that. So it's where I am. I mean, even though the UK obviously we're a lot colder than when you are, we're just not set up for it properly either. And so you're all right on the main roads, obviously that's all sorted, but the country lanes, like where I live, all the little towns and everything, complete disaster. So I just had to go out and get some horse feed this morning, and it was like an ice skating rink. It was terrifying.
Well, that's the problem, right? It's the ice on the
Yeah.
roads, and sometimes you can't see that there's ice. And
Mm.
you can tail spin, you can spin out, and we don't know. We're not taught how to handle that when we're learning how to drive down here because we don't deal with that down here. And so you have to be very, very, very careful. I know schools are already shut down. It doesn't, we'll probably the city of Atlanta will be shut down today for sure, depending on how quickly the snow melts. So you guys just be careful. And it's wild, Catherine. We were just talking about this off air because as I'm on one side, so for those who are not familiar about the of the geography of the United States. Los Angeles is literally straight across from where I live, across the country, but we're 4 time zones away. So
Mm.
it's huge, huge continent here. As my area is being pummeled with snow. Los Angeles is on fire right now. And we were talking about this offline before we started filming. I lived in Los Angeles for a good bit of time in my 20s after university. And this is something that we were talking about this. This is something that does happen in LA. That's kind of like we get tornadoes, but it's to my memory, I've never seen it this bad. And I've seen,
Yeah.
I know where some of these locations are in the city of Los Angeles and people, it's crazy to see it burned out. Here's the thing, Catherine, we were talking about, especially with the group of the internet that's considered like the truthers. Have satanic buildings gone down? Yes. But when you're looking at Los Angeles County, LA, a very small portion of LA is Hollywood. The rest of LA is normal, everyday people just like you and me, people who have lived there for generations. This is their home. Their grandparents are there. This is just they're plumbers, they're lawyers, they're bankers. They're just normal people not associated with the industry. I mean, literally,
Exactly.
it's a small part of LA that's actually the industry. And those are the people that my heart goes out to because those are the ones that are actually being massively affected by these fires. And it's
Completely
heartbreaking.
devastating. I mean, the terror of being in that situation. I've only been evacuated from fires where I live in the woods once, and that was a long while ago, and it's absolutely terrifying. Particularly if, like me, you've got loads of animals that you can't physically put all those animals. You can't put chicken, rabbits, guinea pigs, horses, loads of cats, loads of dogs in 2 cars. But these poor people, one, it's absolutely terrifying, and the bravery of the firefighters is unbelievable. But secondly, it's all the wildlife as well. And we saw this a few years ago. I can remember having the conversations with you and Tamara about all the fires, and David Cohen actually in Australia. And, I don't want to go into graphic details for people, but the amount of koalas and wildlife and lizards and every species. And this is what people think about. Yes, people have literally lost everything, including their lives, often their pets. But literally, the devastation of losing your house and everything in it, your community, access to the schools, and I think a lot of us know that probably why certain areas are being wiped out more than others, and if people don't look at Agenda 2030 and the smart cities. But the devastation, the human cost of having to deal with that, medication, people in hospitals, people in old people's homes, disabled people, animals that you can't get out. I mean, it's horrendous, Bryce. And I think that's why when you said, how are you all? People like you and I and the listeners, it's like that helplessness of seeing this go on and not being able to do anything to stop it or help is horrendous.
And and that's one thing with this truther community, just like with Appalachia, with Helene, I've seen a lot of very psychopathic comments, inhumane comments.
Yeah.
Most of the people affected by these, we'll say natural disasters, for lack of a better word, are just innocent people, just like you and me, just who get up every morning and go to work. And they don't have millions and millions and millions of dollars to rebuild. And the way LA is situated to you guys is it's kind of, there are mountains all around it.
Mm.
And so to come if there's like a mass evacuation to try to get out of it's not going to be easy. It's not as easy as just, let's say you're just a single person with no family, no kids, no
Mm.
animals. It's still not going to be easy for you to get in your car and get out of LA. And the fires too, Catherine, it's not just the fire. I mean, when I lived in LA, Malibu would catch on fire a lot, and Malibu is like kind of an hour, but it would affect us in LA. And for
Yeah,
me, as someone who's not from California, that was always super weird for me. Locals were used to it, but you could see it in the sky. The sky would change colors. You would have soot all over your car, and it would be hard to breathe.
yeah.
So you're also looking at people evacuating from fear, but they're also struggling to actually breathe while doing this at the same time because of the mass impact of a fire miles away. That it's a, so my heart goes out to people out there. Again, I seeing video footage of the city. It's just
Traffic round there. I mean, I've only been there 2 or 3 times, not for long, just on business trips, but the traffic around there is horrendous anyway. Imagine having to get out with the infrastructure, with the visibility down, with the panic, with the not being able to breathe, and with everyone trying to evacuate together. I mean, it's just it it's so sad and so horrendous. And I so agree with you. It's like when you look at people saying, oh, it's all a white hat plan, and I know it's a minority of people, but it's a significant proportion of people in that area. It's like, where is your compassion, your humanity? What have you turned into? And we've spoken about this a lot, as many other people. It's like when you go through life, one of the important questions to ask yourself is, who have I become? Who am I becoming? And when you look and you lose that basic level of empathy and compassion, then seriously, you need to course correct, because you are then in danger of turning into the very people that you're
oh,
trying
psychopaths.
to.
Yeah, I remember I got a comment when Helene happened. And of course, at that point, I don't think I had mentioned, I think I had told you offline, but not publicly, that we couldn't find my cousin. So that really, that's why I was so emotional. And I kept that but private but until he was located. But I got a comment, oh, it's just a bunch of witches and warlocks anyway. And I thought, what a diabolical comment. No, these are people. These are human beings that are just living their lives. How would you feel if something happened in your area and someone said that about you, that your life was disposable? You know, because of a preconceived, and that's why we've talked so much, Catherine, about controlled opposition, because it does not matter. It doesn't matter what you know. It doesn't matter how many truths you think you know. That's not what's going to ascend, if we want to use that word, your soul. What's going to ascend your soul is how you behave and how you treat people, and your ability to empathize and to have compassion. And I'm seeing it's like this controlled opposition in the truther world has created psychopaths.
I couldn't agree more, and I think it's deliberate. I think,
Yeah,
you
me
know, the
too.
more we know about this, it's all deliberate. And as we say, you know, the one thing that the people who are on the dark side aren't, the one thing they're not, is stupid. And whereas most of us, it's so ironic, Bryce, because we've been so cleverly as society, and I'm not talking to every person in the chat, of course I'm not, but I'm just talking about humanity in general in the developed world. You know, people who are sitting here and have got a phone to watch this on, or a computer to watch it on. Not, you know, anyone who's able to use that technology and access information on the internet, on social media. We've been so corralled into short attention spans, you know, 30-second reels, quick bites of information, no depth, no understanding of anything. And it's so ironic, because the people that are pushing Agenda 2020, transhumanism, all the agendas that we don't want, they have got hundreds of year-long plans.
Yeah.
But they're not in it for the short game. This is all very carefully corralled. So, for example, how do you get away with it? You get away with it because in somewhere like Los Angeles, it's known for fires. So you hit them with fires. In other areas, you couldn't get away with that. Like Oxford's a 15-minute city. But it would be so obvious if you tried to do that in Oxford, because we never get fires.
Yeah.
The
Right.
UK,
Right.
and certainly not there. So they will pick different scenarios which could be plausible. And the other thing I wanted to ask your opinion on, because I've got quite a strong one, but I'm very happy to have it change, is all these comments with everyone saying it's biblical and it's prophecy playing out. Well, you can look at that two ways, because actually the easiest way from people to think that and think that it's all out of their hands is to mimic what's in these. So it's so easy. You can look, when you take parts of whatever your religious book is that you study. I hear it the whole time. You know, these people go on those truther channels and they can make anything think anything fit anything.
Yeah,
It's like good stuff,
confirmation bias.
a good, you know, yeah, complete population bias. And the thing is, it's like, you know, if I get a white Audi, I'll look everywhere for white Audis. You make it, you review that data with the output that you want. And that's such a well-known fact. So they can make us fit these things to virtually anything. And if you're actually objective enough and sit down and say it's like the chicken and egg, well, is that prophecy playing out, or are they trying to mimic it to make us feel that it's God's will, for example?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because my answer to that is it's easy to play out the prophecy when you created the prophecy.
Exactly.
They wrote the Bible. They wrote the King James Bible.
Yeah.
The real Bible. I mean, I've gotten threats for this, but this is fact. You can look this up. I have. There's no secret library I have access to. I just have the patience to sit there and dig through this stuff. King James wrote the Bible, and I don't care if you have the NIV Bible or whatever version. It's all coming from the King James Bible. They just put out the these and the thous, right? Like King James was a literal, on the record Satanist.
Yeah.
Proud Satanist. Right? He was stopping people. There was a huge battle going on with all these Protestants in the UK, which, hello, for a lot of the European Americans from English descent, this is part of your history too, just as much as Catherine's history, because this is why our ancestors were fleeing, right? He was trying to stop people from coming to the New World because they didn't want to follow with this controlled Church of England Protestantism controlled by King James. He ended up brutally executing. It was not the first Bible written in English. There was another Bible that was written by, he brutally executed that guy. Then they had the Geneva Bible where people ran to Geneva. That one is now, the real one is under the Vatican. So it is easy, as you say, they're in for the long game.
They're in it for the long game. And I'm so lucky I'm as old as I am. I really am. And I mean that really quite seriously. I'm being literally pushed off my chair. Idris, you're so naughty. He's so brilliant. He's the absolute example of knowing what you want and sticking to your boundaries. This is his chair and I'm getting off it. So if I suddenly fall down, yeah, I'm not drunk. But yeah, this is where I think I look at it and you have got to admire the planning that's gone into this. I would spend a lot of my corporate career in project and program management and risk management. And I look at it and I think you have literally ticked off all the different risks, all the things you put in controlled opposition here. You've done this strategy to deal with that section of the population. And it's a genius. And it's so easy when you're you know, I was speaking to a friend today about it, Bryce. When most of us watching this, I don't know, we've all got different lifestyles, but most of us say in the UK now, just to make ends meet, you've got both parents out at work. Yeah. You're working every hour that God sends. You come back and all this thing, whereas I do believe doing your own research, you've also got to realise if you've got 3 young children to look out for and cook a healthy meal for and keep a house and do a job as well and get them to school, and you might have a couple of animals you want to look after as well, that is more than enough for anyone. So there's only so much resilience. So it's so easy to brainwash us all. And most of the people, whether they're on media, we've got the huge scandal at the moment, I'll be careful how I say it, about the RAPE gangs in the UK. And it's been going on for ages. And quite right that everyone's outraged about the cover-ups. However, Elon Musk, what are you doing about all the trafficking in your country? Now, it doesn't mean, it's so difficult to explain this without people, you have to sort of let people get the whole argument out. So it's brilliant that people are bringing awareness to it because the authorities have covered it up. And the main people that have actually covered it up was the media. So I saw an interview with Jordan Peterson and Piers Morgan. It was so horrendous. I just wanted to get on the phone to them and say, look, you're missing a huge point that most people in England had no idea this was going on. Yeah. Like most people in America had no idea about Epstein Island. Yeah. Because when your media are completely compliant from every direction, and when you're censored on social media for sharing stuff, just like holistic health, you cannot get the information to the people. So don't then don't then project all this lack of action on them, because you can't act on something you don't know about.
Right.
Whereas all the politicians of all the parties were, you know, because we've had numerous changes in government since this has gone on, they all didn't deal with it. The police didn't deal with it. You did a brilliant video on your show yesterday, which I encourage everyone to watch, to say, look, you know, you're not saying that all policemen are bad. A lot of policemen and women are amazing. But when you get a bad one, the damage that can be done is horrendous by it. Similarly with school teachers and social services. But in all of these places, it's like, why are we so, like, going back to the fire situation, why is as humanity are we so looking to sort of go back in time and put the blame? Why can't we say, what are we going to do about it now?
Right.
Now I know what's gone on, and this is beyond horrific. I'd never seen the details of this before, Bryce, of what's gone on in the UK. I'd heard about it, but I'd not seen the scale or the details of it. Now I've seen that. My job as a good citizen is to look at what is in my community.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Where am I seeing children at risk? Where am I seeing animals at risk? Where am I seeing old people at risk? Where can I support if there's a social worker that needs someone to support and someone to, you know, where can you give support? What can you do to stop these things happening? And just with like the fires, you know, everyone just sort of saying, well, yes, it's the 15-minute cities. Okay, well, that doesn't help the people that have lost everything. So what can we do to predict, just like Ollie Damagard does with the false fires? What can we do to predict where's next going to be held and shine a light on it so they can't get away with it?
It's like the Amish basically, what they're a shining example of to take responsibility. They packed up their buggies and went down to North Carolina and just built houses for people. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a paddy wagon of buggies going across the United States to LA from the Amish, because they're going to take care. And that's the thing too. And you know, as you're saying that,
I think when you said that, Bryce, it just,
we have to take care of our own. We have to. And I think that's the problem that you're getting at, Catherine, is that we're so quick to say it's somebody else's responsibility.
Yeah.
Somebody else's responsibility. It's the and I think, and they have done this very slowly. You know, like back, I was fortunate enough that my mother was a stay-at-home mom for most of my childhood. I was fortunate enough because, of course, my generation was a generation where they were making it so women had to be two people working. So when I was growing up, a lot of the morale of life, ethical side of life, was taught at home. Your parents taught you right from wrong. Your parents taught you about where babies were made. Your parents, it wasn't the school's responsibility, less the state's responsibility to do this. It was your parents' responsibility. In fact, I remember in the 8th grade, so that I don't know if it's the same, for that's like 13, 14 years old. I remember I was in a science class where they were going to actually go through the science of reproduction. They weren't going to talk about like how it happened, but just what happens in a woman's uterus when a baby, just the science of it. And my parents had to sign a consent saying that they were okay, even though it was absolutely nothing that was anything to do with, we'll just say, the passion behind that. It was literally once it's in the womb, which really, it was very fascinating to watch that. And I do think that was a great deterrent for,
yes.
I think it was, I'm trying to be careful what I say, but great for kids to actually see what happens to a woman at that young of age. And I think that they slowly, so it gets down to that moral compass. And I said that because in that video, because we've talked about this. Opinions are like assholes. Everyone's got one and they all stink. Our opinions are going to change, but the moral compass is what stays grounded in you. You know, so you look at people, let's say there's someone who's a flat earther and someone who's a round earther. They could be very, very hardcore believing in their beliefs, but they could be friends because their moral compass is still the same. Does that make sense?
Oh, it's so important. I mean, I love it. I've had some brilliant conversations with neighbours over Christmas. I won't say their names because they won't want me to. But there's certain, you know, jobs of doing things like this where you sort of think there would, particularly with what's happened over the last 4 years, clash heads. But actually, we talked about some really important issues and we've shared a lot of information since. And they brought a brilliant perspective to stuff that I wouldn't be getting from my, what I would call, echo chamber audience. And this is why Bryce and I still pursue on YouTube, even though it's got issues. But, you know, I've run my own herb shop and everything. And if I've got my herb shop and I want to set rules about who can and can't come into that, that's quite within my rights.
Yeah.
So I don't like it, but I understand it. And I understand that as a choice, I can choose to stay on and try and abide by the ever-changing rules, or choose to leave. But one of the reasons why we choose to come on is I've realised that it doesn't serve me at all just to be in an echo chamber of people. In fact, it makes me really narrow-minded and really actually not helpful at all, because you're just getting people that are reinforcing the same views without opening on perspective and completely missing something that none of you have thought about.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It turns you into kind of a person you don't want to be, because you lose. It creates black and white thinking, which black and white thinking is a sign of a mental disorder. Like, that is literally part of the MS5 or whatever, where if you're painting things black and white, you've got a mental disorder. You need help, you know, it's just a mental sickness. And so to paint the LA fires as something good, because this is when you're missing the point, that there's nuances here. There's so many nuances. Not one person is all the way good and not one person is all the way bad, right? And so we have to have, you know, and this vigilantism is not of the light. You know, we need to have actual evidence and proof of things, and actually discernment. And I think our past generations had this. You know, we were going to talk about one thing too, Catherine. I'd sent you, and this kind of goes into it too with the laziness. You know, I get that pushback a lot, and it's just, we've kind of talked about this off air. And I talk a lot because of our platforms about exercise, and that's the foundation of spirituality. And I'll talk about like the thoughts come up, the shadow work, the values. But then eventually I was like, wait, we got to go back even further to foundation. You sit here and you guys, you're talking about these chakras, but talk is cheap unless you actually do something, unless you actually move your body. Yeah, what do you think's going to happen? You can't just talk your chakras better. You have to actually move your blood and move and get the so that's why. And I'm going to pull something up, Catherine, because we were chatting about this, and you live a very active life anyway, because you're basically, for lack of a better word, we're saying you're on a farm. You know, you've got
Well, it's funny because my American friends, when I first did it, I was on a retreat actually in California, and they said, I was telling them about my animals. They said, so you live on a farm? And I was like, no, I don't live on a farm. I just got some animals. Because in the UK, a farm means like you commercially produce animals or food or something. But actually, it's a small holding that I've got. Yeah. And this is how most people lived growing up. You know, most people had other animals to look after, and had to chop their own wood and find their own food and weed their own garden and clean their own house and go out and get their food, whether it's hunting or shopping, not just sit there and wait for it to be delivered.
And I think that is, again, intentional, because my mom used to talk about this. So my grandparents, so Catherine, we're 10 years apart. So shift, and people watching, I'm 41, like just kind of shift this, but think back to like your grandparents. Like my mom, I've talked about this before. She always struggled with her weight. So I used to sit when I was a kid at jazzercise classes. Like I always remember my mother exercising, which has its benefits and its positives on my mental health. But, my mother did teach us that exercise is necessary through that experience. But her parents, my grandparents, she would talk, they never like worked out, but their life. And I pulled up a clip, guys. I'm going to pull it up. I can't play the sound because of copyright. So if we have anybody of the younger generation that's watching right now. So my grandparents and my mother would talk about this. And I think this is true across the board for the generation. I'm talking about people born in like the 20s, the 30s, early 1900s. There was a clip I sent to you on Instagram, and I can't play that either because of copyright. But basically they were talking about how the dance hall culture has basically gone away. And back in this time, there was, people would go to dance halls, and that's how they met people, and that's how they were entertained. Now, on top of that, in their daily life, like my grandparents are from Charleston, South Carolina. So I have so many pictures of my grandfather when he was like in his 20s, a young guy, which is always fascinating to see pictures of your grandparents when they were like young, and good looking and had a six pack. Like he was on the beach with his brothers. Like it was very active life to be out on that beach, fishing, whatever they were doing. But my grandparents, now they're from Charleston. So those who are familiar, there's a dance called the Charleston from this time. they do something called two-stepping, which is very different. You can always tell someone from the low country because they dance differently. It's way more active. They weren't grinding each other. But you guys, I'm going to share, this is from a movie, one of my favorite movies called Swing Kids. And so I want you to, this was typical of how they would dance. And I got the music off because this is typical of how they would dance. Now,
It's beautiful, isn't it?
that's how our grandparents danced. Now, look at it. That's exercise.
It's such good exercise, and look at the fun. It's exercise with joy, and it's just community. It's everything. I mean, this was big in the UK as well.
Yeah.
And that's how most of your grandparents met and what they do for entertainment, and even my parents' generation to some extent as well.
Yeah. I remember when I was a kid, having to take cotillion classes to learn how to do the jitterbug, to do all these. But when we look back, that was groundbreaking. So like one of my great grandparents, the only date I know, Paul, my dad's mom's dad, he was born in 1901. So he was born into petticoats.
Yeah.
And then his daughter, my grandmother, that was pretty scandalous for them at that time, to be dancing that way, to wear flat shoes, to be swing dancing is what it was called. But Catherine, that is literal like workouts, what they were doing. But it was life. You're right. They were happy. This was vitality. And, and so when we talk about like the laziness, there was a cartoon, and it was a Wall-E that came out where it showed the people on the ship and they were fat, just laying around they didn't move at all. And they were taken up into space, and they've literally, and I can't help but think there's a correlation between how they've made us fat and lazy and our moral compass.
I couldn't agree with you more. And the laziness is a massive issue because, of course, it's your natural, there's a survival instinct to conserve energy, but they've taken it so far. And even when I grew up, we used to have to walk 2 miles to the bus to school and 2 miles at least up steep hill and everything, carrying all your bags, and it was completely normal. And then you'd come home and take the dogs out for an hour dog walk, and you were always outside playing. And the thing is I can remember my dad saying to me, the world's gone so mad now that people have to go to a golf club or go to a gym or go to all these classes to keep fit, because they never because they grew their own vegetables, they worked their own garden, they walked everywhere, nothing was delivered. There was no such thing as delivery. They ate proper food, they cooked from scratch. And yes, of course, there were downsides of it as well. There were a lot of very unhappy women stuck in that lifestyle, like feeling like slaves in the home. So I'm absolutely not looking at it through rose-tinted glasses. But it's like anyone who's had children, nothing that's worth having is easy. Going through labor is not necessarily easy, but is it worth it? Absolutely. And when you look at the way everything is designed as we see it, whether it's a matrix and a simulation, who knows, but that's all I can work with at the moment, is, my cats and dogs are all lying here, but they would be out hunting. They would be getting their own food. The horses are grazing all the time. The animals, you're building your own nest. The birds are going mad trying to get enough food outside now. And the thing is, laziness that never, ever, ever brings happiness or a sense of fulfillment, or, it's like that. What's that saying? Good times make weak men. It's absolutely true, and it's deliberate. So they've made our attention sad. We all know they've made us sick and unhealthy. They've taken our children away from us one way or the other, because it's very difficult for most people to raise a family now unless you're very well off without both parents out at work, particularly if you want to afford good quality food and things for them. The whole system is buggered, but once you realize that, you can make intentional decisions to do it better. When we grew up, Bryce, the communities, like one of the mums would look after the kids whilst one of the other mums went off shopping.
Oh my God. Yeah. When in my neighborhood, nobody's house was locked. We would, nobody, our parents didn't know where we were. We just had to be home by dusk, basically.
Yeah.
We were on our bikes all the time. we were allowed to skin our knees. Like there was a comic that he did a stand up and he was like, no kids. When I was a kid, someone in the class always had a cast on. There was always a
Always.
broken, always. And
So
that
did my son, by the way. I wasn't arrested by social services because he was always breaking his arms.
I mean, it was. I remember there was a story of someone. Their kids were wearing rollerblades on the trampoline, and it's like you just gotta let them be dumb sometimes to learn that
Yeah.
that's not a good idea, you know. And so we've weakened ourselves so much, and I think too, like I get that pushback all the time, and it drives me crazy about the whole exercise. Like, oh well, you're just lucky. I'm like, do not confuse my discipline for your laziness.
Yeah.
This is, and our parents. Speaking of farms, like back, I mean, my great grandfather, the one that was born in 1901, he ran a dairy farm. You know what time he got up every morning? Probably like 3:30.
Oh yeah, definitely.
He
As
worked
do,
the farm.
and look at all the outrage now about the farmers, but how many people are actually taking a day off work and instead of going on holiday are researching what farms they do have in their areas and finding their numbers and see if they can call or email them and say, look, is there any way we can come to an agreement to buy direct? You know. So I think once we realise it, again, it's not about blame. It's been beautifully played out, but you cannot be responsible. Like our dear friend Kathy O'Brien says, you can't be responsible for what you're doing under mind control.
Yeah.
But once that little light bulb goes on, and it will keep going on because you think, oh, I understand that now. I didn't understand when I was a young mum. I thought I was doing the best thing. I didn't understand that it was all an agenda, and I just praise the Lord that my children have worked out brilliantly. But probably more by luck than judgment. I was very lucky, and they were old enough to miss a lot of the weight rubbish as well, thank goodness.
Yeah.
But look, once you realise, it's like, it doesn't matter, as you always say with your amazing exercise stuff, and I love the fact that in your platform you've got so much of that in there for people of all abilities. It doesn't matter what your starting point is. It doesn't matter. Look, sometimes most people that get a serious health disease, that's when they then make their changes and have the best life ever. Doesn't matter if you're really unfit, really overweight, really stiff, really unsupple, really whatever it might be, substitute it for whatever you want. It doesn't matter. What matters is if you realised you decide to make a tiny change, just a tiny, tiny, tiny change.
Yeah. Well, and it's like I think too, people are going to go to those extremes. Like, oh well, I've just got a slow metabolism, right? Well, let's just break it again down to the very basics. Every single muscle I have in my body, you also have in yours. Now, when it comes to like Catherine, your daughter's a professional athlete. Obviously, that's her karma. Obviously, there's a path for her with athletics. That might not be your path. So you might not ever be physically fit to the level of Catherine's daughter to be able to be a professional athlete, but you still have the same muscles and you still have the same body. So you do what you do to activate your body, and that vitality too, I think about even like in my early 20s, like, no, I didn't like going to the club because it got gross in where there were people were grinding. I totally would have gone to a swing hall. That looks fun. But you would dance for hours and get sweaty and it didn't feel like you were exercising, but you were living. Yeah. And that's what the thing is they've stopped us. They've made us, and I said this during 2020, they've made us so afraid to die that we're forgetting to live. And even with the food, we know that we're kind of damned if we do. Like right now, we know that the odds are stacked against us with the way our food is. We know that. However, that's not an excuse. I know that my grandmother used to, even when my mom was little, would go, they had like general stores, grocery stores, but she would go to the baker for the bread. She would go I don't eat meat, but they would go to the butcher for the meat. So there was definitely more, even for me. I just realized in the 80s and 90s, when I had a peanut butter jelly sandwich, and jelly for us, for the English people, that's like your jam. So it's not like what you call jelly, we call Jello. Yeah. So I know that sounds gross for you guys, but it's peanut butter and jam. That was a sandwich I had almost every day for lunch. And Jif, which is a big peanut butter company here, just now realized they were showing the ingredients from Jif peanut butter when I was a kid to now, two totally different things. So
totally
different. I was eating real peanut butter out of a glass jar, not a plastic jar, a glass jar.
Exactly.
Even that, and so you do the best that you can with what you know. And I say this too all the time, Catherine. I know that it freaks people out when they realize that nothing is what they think it is. But for me, it's like, okay, well then what's the truth? Because obviously the truth is pretty great. if they're doing this much to stop it. And that is within you. If you want to clean your chakras, activate them by actually moving your body. Put music on and dance. Just dance around your house, have fun, and then see how things start to change. Start to practice your humanity. Stick within your community to make sure your neighbors are okay. They interviewed James Woods, the big actor, on CNN, because as he was evacuating, he had the wherewithal to check on his neighbor, who's like a 94 man who has dementia. And he stopped and said, let's go check. Because usually as a caretaker, he saved the man's life. So he had the wherewithal to check on his neighbor. What would happen? And you're right, back in the day, Catherine, we were all in and out of each other's parents' houses. I could,
I mean, we didn't live very near other children, so weren't that, but we all helped each other out, and it wasn't like it doesn't matter what your belief systems are. Like, coming back to how you started it, Bryce, like, you don't have to agree with everything about that person to be a good community member and be there when people need them and check up on them and check they're okay. Like, when I had my children, it was so wonderful when friends brought a meal round, so you didn't have to cook that day because you're trying to work out how to look after a new baby. And just the little things make a thing. And then also, like you just said in the fire, make sure that you check out on someone else. Well, have they got out? If you've got extra space in your car, can I take a couple of the passengers so you can fit all your pets in? Whatever. Can I take your dog for you? Something. It's like, this is what makes life worth living. Sitting in there, being safe, counting your gold coins and hoarding your money and thinking, I'm all right, Jack. No one who lives that existence is happy. I don't think there's anyone watching this who lives that existence. But, I had this lovely chat with Jamie out yesterday, and he's so amazing. When you get people like this, actually give them a chance to talk. And it's like you said, you do what you can with the thing you've got, and you don't have to get the information and think it's scary. You just think, oh, well, that's easy. Like, if you've got two football teams, or soccer as you'd call it, on the pitch, if you can go into the dressing room of the other ones and understand what their tactics are, you're going to win the game.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what I'm talking about, is you can know what their tactics are. Yes, you can go through, we all have to go through the emotional scale, and you might be in shock for a bit, or you might be upset, or you might, whatever your emotions, let yourself go through those emotions. But once you know, then your life is going to be so much better for it.
It is outsmarting. It is outsmarting the player at that point. Once you see the game, you know how to play the game, and 100%, it starts with you. I mean, I know we're preaching to the choir, but all these quote unquote truthers that just stay on Telegram all day blaming everybody else and pointing the finger, you're part of the problem, my friend. You're part of the problem. You got to actually take care of yourself, do the best you can with your family, start buying your food locally. I mean, we're not even supposed to, there are certain foods you're not even supposed to be eating at certain seasons. So if you're in a country that's got winter right now, it's really not in season to go eat strawberries.
Exactly.
So why are there strawberries at the grocery store? And this is common sense. So start to get back in rhythm with nature, and that's how you take your power back. Move your body, get your body sharp, and that helps your immune system too. That helps you fight against if you do eat food that's got, because it's hard right now. So that will help balance that out. And I know I'll plug you one time, Catherine, too, again, not one time, but again, if you guys go to the Esoteric Academy, my platform, we've got an interview with Catherine where she talks more about this. And I'm hoping we'll get you on the Esoteric Academy more, Catherine, to talk kind of more about.
I'd love to, because this year for me is all about going on. I've got a few other friends that I'll be telling you more about who've got private platforms as well coming up that I'm contributing to, because for me, having those conversations in a private setting, we can just cover so much more useful stuff than we can on the public settings. And now is the time for it. Now's the time to get real. Don't fight against the system. Create your new system.
Yeah.
And
be the rebel. Be the counterculture.
Yeah.
I'll be the one that's out at 4 o'clock in the morning going for a run because you're the counterculture, and you're like, I'm going to take my.
And particularly since you're going to have some Zooms where people can come on live, and I can't wait for those.
I'm so excited about that, Catherine. Yeah. I'm gonna have to like say I got the biggest compliment. I've said this on a couple of shows now, but it just in one day I had 2 of our academy students, different women, different parts of the world, both messaged me and said their teenage daughters had joined them for some of the fusion classes, which are my favorite classes too, and they loved it. getting a compliment from a teenage girl is literally the equivalent of winning an Oscar. So
It is. It really is. And it's so lovely. I had a bit the same with my mastering stress course. A couple of people, their teenage, well, one was a son and one was a daughter, and exactly the same for that. And I thought, hallelujah, because these children are so gifted at that
yeah.
age anyway. They're so less in some respects they've had it really tough because of where they've grown up, but
Yeah.
they've still got so much back their intuition, and they haven't had it all beaten out of them yet, and it's just wonderful to see. I love
And
it.
to raise these kids going out into the world to know that, with exercise, I think there is a part of the plan that has beaten us up with it, like you have to punish yourself, but to learn that no, this is you empowering yourself, have a different
Yeah.
perspective on this. And that's great to learn how to manage stress. I mean, I'm so glad I was raised when I was raised. I can't imagine growing up with the internet. Like I can't imagine, like I'm so grateful that I was like the last generation to play outside and not have a cell phone. So the fact that they've got that, and the fact that these parents, our people watching right now, are allowing their children to experience this on our platforms are
And
incredible.
what I love in both these cases is like initiated by the children. They obviously overheard, because I mean, I don't think I get any teenagers listening to my shows, they're not going to listen to an old granny like me. But the fact that they realise, what was so wonderful is these people realise they wanted a resource, and it was in a resource that's accessible to how they've grown up, because they can have it on the app, they can listen to it, they can watch it, they can do it in the way they want to, because they learn in different ways, sort of
Yeah.
thing. So I think it was that self-awareness that they knew they needed some help. I was like, this is just fantastic. If you've got that self-awareness at that age, you are going to do well.
You're the
Going to do
future.
well.
And I'll
Yeah.
end it on this because I meant to say this. So that clip I played you guys was from a
Oh,
movie called
yeah.
Swing Kids that came out in the 90s. This is based on a true story. So speaking of counterculture, this was a group of young teenage 20-year-old kids, like my grandparents' age, during World War II in Germany. And they revolted. Their way of revolting against the Yazis, we'll say, because I know we can't say the N-word on this platform, was to dance to American swing music at night and wear British clothes. So let that sink in. Their revolting was actually exercising, was dancing to American swing music and wearing British clothes. They were the counterculture. And so let's take, and that was a true story. I think the movie is fictional characters, but it was based on a true movement that happened in Germany called the Swing Kids. That's what they were called. And so what can we learn from them in that you want to be a rebel, get up and do something. Don't just sit at home and play on your phone. Get up and actually do something,
Well, I love that. I just think it's fantastic, and it just ticks all the boxes. I'll tell you what, these are people in a world war where so much is out of their control. They don't have access to any food. They haven't got electricity half the time. They obviously did to listen to the music, but so much stacked against them. And yet, we talk about raising your vibration, but you're fit, you're getting oxygen in there, you're producing all the happy hormones, you're interacting, you're forming community. It ticks every box, and they weren't stressed like people are now, even though they were in the middle of a world war.
Even though they could have been arrested and sent to the same. The League of Their Own. That's the women's baseball team here when the men were off and they played baseball. I'm actually, if you guys have never seen Swing Kids, I will put they might have the full video up on YouTube. I don't know. It's an old movie. It's from the 90s. Christian Bale's in it. What's the guy's name? The main guy. I can't remember his name. Anyway, there's a couple big people in that. Barbara Hershey's in it. But I'll put that trailer down there for you guys to watch. The dancing's great. You can tell they trained really hard to learn how to do that kind. I think it looks fun. Listen, I think we need to get rid of the twerking. Let's bring back swing dancing. I think that looks so fun to do that. So I will tag that down below, you guys, so you can watch. It's a fun movie. If you have a young kid, it might be hard to kind of explain the seriousness of what's actually, because there is a serious tone to it because it is World War II. But the dancing is fun to watch, and actually it gets into the mind control, because you see, I think it's Christian Bale's character that actually has to join the Yahtzee youth, and so you see what they would do to these boys to mind control them. So it does show a bit of what the Yahtzees did, which is obviously now playing out today too. So anyway, you guys, is there anything you want to end with today, Catherine, before we sign off?
I just think I'm going to go out in the snow now and walk my lovely dogs and carry loads of water down to the horses. And I just think, feeling the empathy is really important. If you're finding it heavy at the moment, let yourself feel happy. Find someone supportive to talk it through about and know that you're not alone. And then make sure that the biggest FU to the system is to be the fittest, healthiest, and actually happiest that you can be. And by doing that, sometimes those of us who are very empathetic can feel almost guilty about being really all right where so many people aren't. But that's what they need. You can't save someone else if you're in a dire state anyway. So don't be afraid to go out and have fun and really enjoy your life and do some stuff for you.
Absolutely. I definitely back what you just said completely. Be the sassiest, fittest, healthiest you can be. Nothing is going to piss the establishment off more than you actually being vital. Having
Absolutely.
And so anyway, guys, well, I'll put all the links, Catherine's channel. Again, if you're new, before we sign off, I meant to do this in the beginning, but if you are new to my channel, Catherine and I trade off every other week. So next week will be over on Catherine's channel. This is Catherine's YouTube channel. All her links will be down in the description box below, guys, including her Instagram account. She has a huge Instagram account. So if you're into like holistic health, if you're into any type of middle finger to the big powers that be, you would love to watch Catherine's, because you give just enough information to send people off in the right direction to researching their own health. And so I'll have all that down in the description box below, you guys. So anyway, until we meet again next week for our coffee chats, have a wonderful beginning of your 2025, guys. If you're in the South, make sure you're warm. Don't try to drive anywhere. And for the people in LA, our heart goes out to you. Please let us know if you're anybody in the Los Angeles area and you know of any good charities that we can help send supplies to. Just let me know in the comment section, and we'll share it and pass it around. So, all right, you guys, have a wonderful, wonderful week, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye.